1535. Suleiman the Magnificent was at the height of his reign, but he still had unfinished business with the Habsburgs in the west and the Safavids in the east. That's what we'll be talking about in today's episode. Just a reminder, you're watching the Amazing History channel. Here we talk only about the most interesting events from the history of the ancient world and the Middle Ages. You can support the channel's development, as always, through sponsorship on Patreon or PayPal. Also, don't forget to like and leave your opinion in the comments. Now let's get started with the topic of this episode. The struggle against the Habsburgs in the West was not limited to military actions on land. Moreover, besides Europe, North Africa became an important theater of military operations. Back in 1533, the Sultan, realizing the importance of controlling the Mediterranean, began to expand his fleet. And for this mission, he needed a skilled naval commander. That person was Khayr al-Din Barbarossa, whom I have already talked about on this channel. In the summer of 1534, a Turkish squadron of 80 ships led by Barbarossa approached Tunis. After a brief battle, the capital of the Hafsid fell. Tunisia's remaining cities surrendered to the Turks without resistance. In 1535, Suleiman stationed his garrisons here. In the same year, Bedouin tribes rose up against the Ottomans. But in the battle near Kairouan, the cannons of the Sultan's artillery put them to flight. After that, even the Bedouins recognized Suleiman's authority. But this time, the Turks were unable to hold on to their conquests. In July, a large fleet of Charles V approached the shores of Tunis with an army of 30,000 on board and drove the Ottomans out of it. Thus, they drove a wedge between the Turkish possessions in Africa. In response to this, starting from 1537, Khayr al-Din raided and imposed tribute on more than 20 islands in the Adriatic Sea belonging to the emperor's allies, the Venetians. In addition, indirect assistance to Barbarossa's corsairs was provided by Francis I himself, remember, the one who was friends with the Ottomans against the Habsburgs. He made a secret agreement with Suleiman, and he allowed the corsairs to base themselves in ports in the south of France, as a result of which they unleashed real terror in the Mediterranean. Realizing the threat posed by Barbarossa, the Venetians took the initiative to create an alliance, a Holy League, which included Spain, Venice, Genoa, the Papal States, the Habsburgs, and the Knights, the Hospitallers, who were now based on Malta. A Genoese admiral named Andrea Doria was appointed to lead this alliance. But for now, let's return to the European theater of war. The 1533 peace treaty between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans did not satisfy the Austrian Archduke Ferdinand, who was forced to recognize Janos Zapolya as the king of part of Hungary. Therefore, in 1537, the Habsburgs attacked the Ottomans on land. A 24,000-strong army under the command of Johann Kocziana invaded Ottoman territories with the intention of capturing Osijek, a major logistical hub in the region. But the fortress garrison was able to fight back, and reinforcements arriving from Belgrade dealt a major defeat to the Austrians. The Ottomans lost only a few hundred soldiers in this battle, while the Habsburgs suffered losses of more than 20,000 men. The defeat forced the Habsburgs to reconcile with Zapolya and secretly sign the Treaty of Nagyvarad with him, behind Suleiman's back, in February 1538. According to its terms, Ferdinand I of Habsburg recognized Janos Zapolya as the lifelong king of Hungary and ruler of two-thirds of the Kingdom of Hungary, while Zapolya agreed to Ferdinand's rule over Western Hungary and recognized him as his heir to the Hungarian throne, since Janos was childless. Zapolya also arranged to receive military assistance against the Turks. As you can see, Suleiman's loyal vassal began playing his own game behind his back. At the same time, the Christian fleet captured the coastal city of Castelnuovo, located on the shores of modern-day Montenegro. This city was now supposed to become a coastal outpost for an invasion into the heart of Ottoman territory. Naval cover was provided by the ships of the Holy League. A clash between the fleets of Barbarossa and Andrea Doria was now only a matter of time. In the naval battle of Preveza in September 1538, the Ottomans defeated the combined Christian fleet. There is a detailed account of this battle on the channel in the episode about Barbarossa, so I won't dwell on it here. In that same year, 1538, Suleiman launched a campaign into Moldavia. The reason for this was the secret connection between the Moldavian voivode Petru Rareș and Ferdinand of Austria. Reinforced by the many thousand-strong horde of the Crimean Khan, the Ottoman army took control of the entire country and plundered it. Petru Rareș fled to Transylvania, and in his place, Suleiman installed his brother, Ștefan. Moldova was forced to pay a large annual tribute. At the mouths of the Danube and Dniester, the Sultan fortified the fortresses of Kilia and Ackerman and created a special sanjak which included the territory between the Dniester and the Prut, that is, Bessarabia. This sanjak will serve as a staging ground for a future war against Poland. After the Battle of Preveza, the situation changed. The plans to invade deep into Ottoman territories from the staging ground at Castel Castelnuovo had to be abandoned. Charles V, Habsburg, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, refused to give this city to the Venetians, which led to the beginning of the end of the Holy League. The coalition was falling apart. The Venetians were demanding peace with the Ottomans, and without their ships, the Allies' forces would be severely weakened. Suleiman did not want to leave such an outpost to the Christians, so he ordered Barbarossa to reinforce his fleet and prepare it to capture Castel Castelnuovo in the spring of 1539. Castel Castelnuovo fell into Ottoman hands, but the victory came at a high price for Barbarossa. You can learn more about this siege in our episodes about Barbarossa. As a result, Habsburg influence in the Eastern Mediterranean was undermined, at least for the time being. As a result of all these Ottoman successes, the position of the Christian coalition worsened. In 1540, peace was signed with Venice, which ceded several cities in Dalmatia to the Ottoman Empire and paid 30,000 ducats in reparations. The only one who was dissatisfied with this situation was Emperor Charles V. The defeats at Preveza and Castel Castelnuovo made him very angry. He tried to win Barbarossa over to his side, but without success. The pride of the powerful emperor could not accept such an outcome, and Charles was determined to respond. In October 1541, he attempted to strike the Ottomans in North Africa. A Spanish armada of 500 ships carrying a landing force of 24,000 soldiers approached Algiers. However, the time of year was unsuitable for such a campaign. His closest commanders tried to persuade the emperor to wait, but driven by pride and a thirst for revenge, Karl did not listen to them. He personally led the expedition. On October 23, 1541, he landed with his army a few kilometers from the city of Algiers and began preparations for the siege. However, during the night, a fierce storm broke out, sinking many ships, destroying the Spanish supplies and ruining the gunpowder, making the cannons useless. Karl, hoping to save face with the remnants of his troops, attacked the city, but the Ottoman garrison held firm. The emperor had no choice but to end this inglorious campaign, which lasted only 12 days. It cost him about 12,000 dead, drowned, and captured, as well as 200. And now let's return to Suleiman's ally, Janos Zapolya. Quite a character. I already mentioned that he made a secret agreement with Ferdinand, in which he promised to make him his successor. He was already past 50, he was a bachelor, and he had no offspring. Ferdinand was sure that things would stay that way and that he would simply become the king of all Hungary after János's death. But, in February 1539, Janos suddenly got married to the daughter of the Polish king, Isabella. This was a shock for Ferdinand. And probably he was even more shocked by the news of Isabella's pregnancy. He realized that Janos had simply fooled him. In retaliation, Ferdinand turned Janos into Suleiman, telling him about the terms of the secret agreement, hoping that the Sultan would punish his vassal. We don't know what Suleiman's reaction was. It seems he decided to wait and see what this situation would bring. Ultimately, just 2 weeks before his death, in July 1540, Janos had a son, Janos II Sigismund, who became the heir to the Hungarian throne. Ferdinand claimed his rights to the throne, saying, "Your late king promised it to me." But many Hungarian nobles did not want to be under Habsburg rule. They rejected Ferdinand's demands to give him the throne and proclaimed Janos Sigismund, Janos's son, as king and Queen Isabella as his regent. Letters were sent to Krakow and Constantinople to secure the support of Poland and the Ottomans. Suleiman recognized him as his vassal. However, Queen Isabella's support among the Hungarian feudal lords turned out to be insufficiently strong, and some of them switched to the Habsburg side. Ferdinand decided that the time was right to reclaim Hungary from the Ottomans, and in February 1541 he sent an army of 50,000 under the command of Wilhelm von Roggendorf to besiege Buda. Upon learning about the Austrian offensive, Suleiman decided to send an army to help the Hungarians, but it was still far away. Von Roggendorf reached Buda on May 3rd. It was defended by fewer than 3,000 Hungarians and Serbs. The Queen and her allies had spent several months strengthening the walls and building fortifications. The Habsburg commander, not wanting to waste time on a siege, tried to negotiate with Isabella, promising her and her infant son safe passage to Poland if Ferdinand's claims to the throne were accepted. Although the Queen was ready to agree, the Hungarian lords strongly opposed this and imprisoned her. Von Roggendorf had no choice but to begin the siege. His troops used artillery to breach the city's defenses, but the Hungarians managed to repel the attack. Fierce attempts to take the city continued until the arrival of Suleiman's main army, which drove back the Habsburg troops and inflicted heavy losses on them. Over the next few days, Suleiman and his Hungarian allies celebrated the victory. Hungarian nobles and the Queen spent several days in the Ottoman camp near the walls of Buda. Meanwhile, Ottoman soldiers freely roamed the city at their discretion. However, this celebration turned out to be a ruse. Suleiman could no longer trust the Hungarians, so he occupied the city without resistance. He informed Isabella that he recognized her son as king, but his rule would be limited only to Transylvania and the lands east of the Tisza River. Buda and all other territories would be turned into Ottoman pashaliks, governed by Ottoman governors. With these words, Suleiman returned to his capital. However, neither Isabella nor the Hungarian nobles were satisfied with the reduction of their lands and influence. Therefore, in December 1541, they signed another secret agreement with Ferdinand, whose troops they had fought against just a few months earlier. Isabella promised to abdicate the throne if he managed to recapture Buda. And indeed, in August 1542, Ferdinand sent another army into battle. The Austrians moved slowly, which allowed the Ottomans to organize the defense of Buda and Pest, the siege of which ended in complete failure. Suleiman had to respond and launched a counter-campaign in April 1543. Between June and August, he managed to capture many important fortresses north of Buda. The Habsburgs were exhausted by the war. And since the situation on the Safavid border was heating up again, Suleiman also wanted peace. Therefore, in 1545, a truce was concluded through the mediation of the French king Francis I, a longtime ally of Suleiman. 2 years later, Suleiman signed a treaty with Charles V and Ferdinand. His conquests in Hungary were recognized, and Suleiman accepted Habsburg rule over part of Hungary in exchange for 30,000 gold florins per year. On that upbeat note, I will pause my story about Suleiman the Magnificent. The next episode will be the final one, so don't miss it. You will learn about his final campaigns and how his wars with the Safavids ended. See you!